I'm very joyous and tremendously grateful today, and also finding myself very curious as well, which I don't take that for granted. I'm very glad to be sitting in this space today with Natalia Martin. Thank you so much for taking the time. I really appreciate this.
Oh, thanks for having me, Jeff. I've been excited for this.
Yeah. Well, I've had an opportunity to read some about you, and what I find is that as strange as it may sound, I try not to read too much because I really enjoy hearing from other people about their journeys and their evolution in their own words. So, what I thought I would do to start out the conversation, if I could ask you what your inner journey and what your evolution and transformation throughout that journey thus far, what those things mean to you at a deeper level.
Sure. I grew up, my mother was into astrology and also religious, but, open-minded to all the possibilities that could be out there. And I went through periods of being open to that and then not being so open to it. So both sides of it. And then about 3 years ago, things just started to open up. I like to call it a forced spiritual awakening. It wasn't, which can be quite bumpy and uneasy, but I was not deliberately looking for more answers at that time or up to those things. Um, it just started that I kind of was questioning, how people are acting out of the ego, whether, and how that is in opposite or opposition to living from the heart, inspired action, and those things. So I was starting to toy with those ideas. And then very quickly, my mother died. A week later, my stepfather died. I'm an only child.
Oh, wow.
I'm quite happy doing things independently and whatnot, but it really shook my world. And, as it would for anybody. But what I found suddenly was all these synchronicities started happening. I had these sudden downloads, these knowings. The world just was brilliant colors. So in opposition to, these horrible things that were happening, on the other side of it, an entire new way of being, way of understanding the world was just throwing itself in my face. And it forced me to question everything. My personal relationships, my work, all of that. And I mean, literally, literally everything I was doing was, does this make sense to me? Is this my truth? And I discovered in a lot of ways that I was not living my truth. And I had a visceral need to shed everything that was not in alignment with my truth at that point. And that can be very, it was very disruptive to myself and those around me. But it was one of those things where, there is no other alternative. This is why I am here. And so my life since then has been a series of changes and creations and relationships that align with that.
Yeah, thank you so much, and I deeply honor that, and I find myself wondering through this process, at least in the beginning, when there was this awakening, or however you might refer to this, did you have someone that was walking this journey with you, or was this more along the lines of you just listening and tuning in? I've heard the phrase before, "your true north." I don't know if that really resonates or not, but I'm wondering if that is something that you were just following your own inner guidance.
Well, at first I was, because I sort of had an idea what it was about, but on just the sheer enormity, grand scheme of things, I was still putting together the pieces. Um, and so at the beginning, I did not. I was having lots of physical symptoms of this awakening as well, which I did not know they were connected at the time.
Hmm.
But I mean, my heart rate was like 145 all the time. I thought it was, linked with this awakening, but I thought, I have young kids. I need to get this checked out by formal doctors. I'm not going to woo myself out of, got to stay in the head sometimes, so I had
Yeah.
the sticky heart rate monitor on for 2 weeks, thinking there's really nothing wrong. Is big kundalini awakening, which I was in bed one night and I thought there was an earthquake. I mean, it was physical, shaking, movements around. I remember, I just stood there for a while, kind of going, what is this? I picked up my phone, got it off airplane mode and was checking for earthquakes here in Central Oregon. Nothing. So I started to do a lot of research as to, are these connected? And if so, how? And looking back now, I did not know how to ground myself. I did not know any of those techniques or even what that was. And I saw on Groupon an advertisement for a local Reiki practitioner. And I thought, you know what, my whole world's cracked open right now. I'm kind of skeptical, but I need something. It was getting to the point where I needed some guidance on how to manage things. I didn't know where to look or how to physically dial some of that stuff down. And so I went to this Reiki practitioner and I physically felt energy moving through me. My legs started twitching, I got the whole body kind of reactions. She was also an intuitive and gave me some very helpful advice as well as grounding. And I couldn't believe it, and that was the whole, I guess, the door to me looking into, everything is energy and the power of it and how we can use it, and how things can get blocked and stuck. And so that was really where I started to find that support, and really got then into the community. There's quite a big, beautiful spiritual community here in Bend, Oregon. And through that, I went to my first gong bath, which again was another thing. I thought this is in the spiritual community. People say it helps, release stagnant energy, shake things up. I love music. So I went to that and it was an amazing transformative experience and got hooked from then on. I've since become a sound bath practitioner myself. I still love receiving the sound baths as well as giving them. I joined an intuition development group. And so, my closest relationships now are with people that, we're all on this path, we're all learning. Everyone's in different places and we all have these beautiful gifts to share and learn from one another. So I'd say, so I did find those people. And I think, I've encountered several people on the retreats I've been on, and they say that those retreats are the only place that they can find like-minded individuals or their soul tribe. And I'm sure it is much harder in some places than in others, but I think there are people everywhere. And some people you have to dig a lot deeper to find them and it takes longer. I have been truly blessed on this journey, just finding amazing souls.
Yeah, that is beautiful. I love that. And I'm wondering too, I don't know if this is a fair question. I'm really just, musing out loud, so to speak. And I wonder, and there again, there may or may not be an answer to this. And it also may or may not be, relevant or pertinent to your journey. But I'm wondering with the physical work in terms of the various practices that you were, undergoing and practicing before this awakening, and the work that you were, doing with other people and with clients. I'm wondering if there was something about that was somehow possibly bringing about an awakening of energy that I'm kind of wondering if this, and there again, I don't know if it's a fair question, if this awakening was really based first in the body or in your physical being, and that you had experiences, that were awakened as a result of that.
I mean, it's interesting, and let me know if I'm not answering, if I'm not getting the quite gist of your question, but I have a few backgrounds. One is a PhD in applied psychology. The other is a fitness instructor and personal trainer. And I very much feel those all align fully with what I'm doing now. Everything informs the other: mind, body, and soul. But for years, I was a competitive runner. I got into ultra marathons, which ultimately destroyed me because I got so far away from feeling into my body, and knowing when to rest and when to recover. And my mind pushed me beyond what my body could do. So I think that the universe for quite a while was trying to knock on my door and say, hey, I have the key for you. And I was in my head, my ego wouldn't listen. I would, get injured, have foot surgeries, still wouldn't listen. So I think the universe has wonderful ways of nudging us along and then shoving us off a cliff.
Yeah.
But in terms of moving that energy, as a long distance runner, I would often get into that state of flow. And it's the same euphoric feeling where time stops and you're just in this beautiful realm and you're connected to everything. And it's the same feeling I can get listening to music or playing music. And I feel that is energy moving. And whether it's physically moving the body or whether it's a, more energetic connection. But I do think it was going through me at that point, but I was on a very 3D, living in my chicken suit realm of playing with energy,
Yeah.
on that level. And so I think my transformation was, and I was very interested in that flow state of cognitively, physically, what is going on with that. There's some beautiful research on that. And I was actually, when I was still in my pure fitness psychology mode, I was interested in doing research on that physical flow state. And looking back at that, I realized, you know what, that was my soul actually pulling me towards, that same realm, but in a different way. So I feel like
Exactly.
I've taken that 3D realm, and my interest is more now in creating these containers where people can do self-healing and move energy, without sweating. So,
Yeah, and it's interesting when you're speaking of that, I have to wonder that when the universe, knocks on your door, so to speak, I wonder if it speaks to people in different ways and using different languages. In other words,
yes.
if you have been, on a certain journey up until that point of awakening, or when you begin to see things differently and feel things differently, I'm just wondering if that's something that resonates. In other words, just getting a sense that there's so many different ways that we can come to these awakenings.
Oh, absolutely. I think, and everybody, I believe, is so unique. And, we all get caught up in patterns of living in our heads and the 3D world, in different ways and to varying degrees. And that can change, throughout our lives intentionally or not. Um, but I do feel like the universe will create blockages to things we want or take things away from us if they're not for our highest good. And I mean, I've experienced myself where I stay stuck and frustrated and I keep pushing harder for the goals that I thought I wanted, usually, more 3D earth-based goals, whether it's, I have an academic background, there's if you publish there are accolades with that, and there's certain levels of achievement and things that it's very easy to buy into because that is your measure of success in that role. And, you know, fully guilty of that. So when the universe starts to block, do you push harder or do you look at, okay, what is the universe trying to tell me? Do I need to regroup and approach this from a different angle? Is this something that is aligned with me in my heart, my soul? There are any number of things. It doesn't necessarily mean abandon the cause, but it might. And for me, when I look back on my life, and there were a variety of times where I just thought the answer was to push harder, try harder, rather than taking the space and, stop moving, stop looking at everything around you, go within and truly listen. And I think when we truly listen, sometimes we get very surprising answers, or creative insight or anything like that. But so often, I've noticed many people don't take that time because we're afraid to press pause because we might miss out on something.
Oh yeah.
And,
Yeah.
it's like you can't take the foot off the gas because then you'll veer off course. Whereas the opposite is actually true. If you take your foot off the gas, if you take that time, you go within and, listen to what's there, that's your course. And the universe always rewards that. It might not be in the timing that we think or particularly in the ways that we think it will come to us, but the universe responds in just magical ways.
Yeah, that as I hear you share that, it makes me think of the ancient Chinese concept of Wu Wei, or what they refer to as effortless doing. Some people have referred to it as non-doing, which I know in the Western world we can immediately think that that means don't do anything,
Right.
whereas this is really more of the flow state. And so I'm wondering if as someone who did academic work, was there some of this that was uncomfortable in terms of finding that maybe not that you couldn't get there through knowledge, or was there ever any experiences of that in terms of your own experiences that just you had experiences and felt things, but maybe it could not be understood?
I'm trying to
And
think.
I'm sorry if that, and I apologize. Sometimes
Yeah, I'm not sure
my
I
questions
grabbed the
are.
question. I mean, when I was in that academic world, I was not tapped in. That was actually, looking back, that's where I lost it. And I find no fault with that field at all. That was me and my personal journey. I know many people, that I had worked with that, they are tapped in, they are following their passion. You see how the universe rewards them, things like that. I lost my passion for the topic a bit. I was struggling so hard to hang on to it, because I had pretty much, my life was built around that. At that time, I had lived in a couple different countries and, had planned to stay in England and do academic work, and I had it all planned out. And so in my mind, it was all a matter of just getting those ducks in a row. And I thought I knew how to get those ducks in a row. And even when, I felt like my passion was done with it, or things weren't working out, I still would force it and try to make things fit, and they would still fall apart. I eventually, stumbled through finishing everything there. Not to say it was all a struggle and all awful. It wasn't. There were, some beautiful, wonderful moments, but I was not fully aligned. But I didn't have a plan B. And that was my hang up. I thought everything has to make sense. Everything must be logical. I don't have a plan B. I cannot think of a plan B. So I'll stick with what is okay. And I think we all get very comfortable with discomfort. And so that's where I stayed. Um, what I've come to realize is, when I don't have a plan B in my life, but when I follow my heart completely, things drop in that are beyond what I could have ever imagined. But I didn't have that trust. I didn't have that surrender. It was fear-based reactions. And I think those are the most damaging things of when we really drop in and feel, and we know if something is right or not, even if we don't know why. We intuitively know. And the least you could do is step to one side, step out of it, make a change. But the unfamiliar can be scary. And I like to ask people, what's your relationship with uncertainty? And some people find it exciting. It's an adventure. Other people, it is terrifying because they go to worst case scenario, or it's just uncomfortable because they're used to having control. And so I encourage people to get excited about uncertainty, because the best that can happen. The worst can happen as well, but let's manifest all these positive things, because if you're feeling out of alignment, that's not going to get better doing what you're doing.
Yeah, thank you. I really, that really resonates. And I'm wondering, I had a teacher one time, I don't know if this is if this is something that makes sense or not. I would be interested in hearing how this lands, so to speak. I had a teacher that used to say, when you get to the fork in the road, take it. And
Mhm.
and what I thought was very interesting about it was that they would never actually really explain that statement, but it was really up to each person to, take that, and if they chose to, and to work with that. It makes me think a little bit of like Zen koans, so to speak, these questions that really cannot, there's no rational answers for them. And if there are any answers, it's, within each person's heart. And so I'm wondering if that particular statement, if that resonates in any way, just in relation to your journey, and when you
Yeah,
were at
yeah, I
that
think,
point where you recognized there was no plan B, so to speak.
yeah, and I think it's a wonderful way to look at things. Of, sometimes you have to pick a direction, and it's okay if it's the wrong one. It's different from what you were doing, and it's going to, one door closes, another one opens, and maybe it's not fully aligned with what you feel you need, but it's going to give you more information, and it's going to bring new connections and new opportunities, and you're going to be moving forwards. Because it doesn't always feel like forwards movement, but if you're stuck where you are, doing the same thing is not going to bring about change. So,
Yeah, and that's it. As you say that, I get this sense of, if I think about a fork in the road, going one way or the other, that there can be so many things that I get a sense that can happen when we are, in a place of not knowing and not sure, but yet, that somehow, that as painful as it can sometimes be, that trust that you speak of gets cultivated, or that we get more in touch with it. I didn't know if that makes sense or not.
oh, absolutely. And I feel like, deep down, we do intuitively know what we want, what we need.
Yeah.
Um, and we can always just sit down and ask ourselves, if I had no fear of, any sort of consequences, internal, external, financially, anything, what would I do? And to just sit with that for at least an hour. And, I like to free write. I like to brainstorm. People could paint it, color it, record themselves talking, just think. Um, you get through the first 15 minutes and it's basic stuff, but then it goes much deeper when we peel away layer after layer after layer and look at what we truly want. And if there were no fear, what would you be doing? If there were, um, not worrying about how you're going to get there, or all the logistics, because that's head stuff. Let it
Yeah.
go. It's okay to let it go. Some people find it so difficult to think with their heart and not their head. And when you're thinking with your heart, it's really feeling. But we're still putting it into words. But I love doing that exercise, always surprises me with what comes up. And then to know that if it's for our highest good, the universe wants to give us those things. And to even make it, just set an intention, light a candle. I'm into crystals, set up these things and put it out to the universe. And I've done these things and it's amazing. I'll get emails from, certain people and we can collaborate. I'll meet certain people that, we come up with ideas together, and it's this beautiful collaboration. And I feel it's our own energy. It's the energy of the universe, and it's all working together. And the universe will conspire to make these things happen, but we have to be open and be willing to walk through the door, because the doors are always out there. And sometimes we block them, even subconsciously, with those fears or that feeling that you don't deserve that, or that's not realistic for my life. But it's shedding that and truly believing that those things can be yours. They are yours. And yeah, put it out there.
Yeah, and it would also be very interesting to hear anything that you might share, as far as, as you had this awakening and were moving, on this particular journey. If there was anything you might speak to in terms of things that if you were letting go, things that, about yourself, that you believed who you were, and only to find out that letting go of who you were, or who you thought you were, and finding out what you were and are, if that makes any sense.
Sure. I, a big thing for me was feeling that the way my life was, I had things that didn't sit right with me, that had been that way for a long time, but I accepted them as part of the decisions I had made in the past. So I was married at the time, a wonderful guy. I just felt we were not aligned. Um, but I felt, in society, we make marriage vows. I stick with my marriage vows. Um, and, what kind of person would I be if I don't stick to those marriage vows? And that idea that, okay, my life is not as I would have envisioned it, or my deep heart desires, but those are decisions I made. And this is the kind of person I thought I was, that I don't care what I'm feeling inside. I have a piece of paper that says this, and I made these vows. So I will make the best of my life. And I do still believe we have to make the best of what is around us. But I didn't allow myself to even entertain the idea of, okay, we separate, I create a life here, you create a life here, and all of that. And when this awakening happened, it was, again, this visceral feeling that, I felt like I was then living a lie,
Mm.
that it was not fair to anyone in that sense. And it got out of my head at that point. It was just a knowing. And that was very tricky, because that's great. I have this woo woo knowing, I now have, a really wonderful man as a husband. It doesn't work. I have, I have to explain this. How do how I think the spiritual community, we kind of all understand like, hey, I got this download. I need to do this.
Yes,
The
yes.
people I hang with, we all have these conversations going, but to be able to translate that and have, sit down and have the discussions and, you know, try and work through it through therapy and whatever. But when you have a deep knowing, and I felt like that was a good thing I had to go through because, we can't just live up here in, the 4D. We have to navigate the world with logic and thought and integrate with, with everybody. So having those difficult conversations, I think that was another part of my awakening and a part of myself that I shed was, I used to shy away from conversations, difficult conversations at times. Um, because it was, not only was it vulnerable, but it was thinking things will blow up and get worse, or, just
Mm.
all the different stories we create around it. And from that awakening, I realized all we can operate on is truth, and to have those conversations from the heart and speak your truth. And whatever happens, that's going to be for the best because it was working from a place of truth. Um, and that's how I navigated I navigate everything now is approach it from the heart. And when I was going through the divorce, there are a lot of emotions flying around and different things. And, um, weird things can spark people off and do things like that. And I made a commitment that I would deal with everything from my heart. So if I was thinking about something, all right, get out of your head. How do you feel in the heart? Act from the heart. And everything unfolded, I felt like in this way that it should have. And I did it as an experiment because I'm like, I don't know how to deal with this. Nobody knows how to deal with these things. Okay, try this. And it works, and I certainly don't take all the credit for it, but
Yeah.
from that spot, I thought, all right, I now have the evidence because I do have this scientific background. I like that. I don't need scientific evidence for things, much now, but it's very nice and comforting, and it can be a bridge for people too, um to just approach things from my heart, whether difficult situation, you don't know what to do, speak from the heart, don't worry about the words. I used to get hung up on words and how do I verbalize this, how do I say it? Does not matter. If you speak from the heart, I always trust that that other person will receive it as you intend it. um and I have found that to be true on every aspect of my life, other challenges that have come up that I've felt myself go up into my head. And I thought, no, that doesn't work as well as when you drop down. And
Yeah.
every single one of those situations turns out in a way that, I feel is completely blessed. And yeah, I just feel like that's the co-creation with the universe, where the universe is like, I'm going to give you, guidance so you can take inspired action. And it's up to us to listen and follow that.
Yeah, I have such respect for that. I really do. And I was going to ask you also, when you were speaking about, and I can definitely identify with this, when you're hanging out with people in your tribe, so to speak, or in your spiritual community, it's sometimes I went through this a lot where it was so easy, and it felt so natural. And that's where I really felt like I belonged. And yet the relationships, just my karma, in other words, my family, friends that I had previous to this, it seemed like that was a little more challenging, and I really wanted to hide out in that like you were talking about, in that 4D world. And so it would be very interesting to hear anything you might share just in terms of what this was like in terms of family and people who knew you before this awakening and this new journey. What that's been like for you to relate to those people, and any formative lessons learned as a result of that.
Mhm. First off, I feel, the universe brought me in particular, two absolutely amazing souls on the woo-woo journey, where we can talk about this journey of, how we used to live, what we went through, how we live now. So I have, that connection. But I found it most interesting with my kids.
Hmm.
My daughter is very religious. She is very active in her church youth group and sings and is on, these planning committees and things like that. And I remember there was one time, she's a teenager and, likes to kind of take jabs at me at times or, assert her independence. And, she just made some comment about crystals are evil or something
Mm.
like that, and kind of my ego mind was like, well, who do you think created those crystals? Your God did that. Or, they come from the earth. Let's all find common ground. Like I have complete respect for her beliefs. And I want her to be fully supported in, whatever she's believing in, and whatnot. And she knows that, but I think she does, I'm sure she thinks some of the stuff I do, again, like I have crystals and I feel, and I talk about energy and I've offered, to do Reiki on her and she's just not interested. Uh,
Mm.
and at first, I thought, we all have things that we want to pass on to our kids, what we value. And again, I would like them to just be open-minded to what it is they can take and choose. But, I feel like this is what I have to offer. And there are other things I'm aware of about my personality that I have to offer, but this is what I value most. And she has no interest. And the thing is, it's like, I have to respect that. And I do. It would be really cool if she, if she wanted to do stuff with me, but she does not. My son and I have wonderful conversations. He's very curious just about the world and energy, and he seems to me, just to be open to these things. And so that's a fun bonding kind of thing. Um, and then in terms of, other people, I guess I feel like, sometimes I dichotomize my life. I have a cycling class that I teach 6:15 in the mornings. And I think once or twice I've mentioned, hey, if you guys just want to relax and restore, I am offering a sound bath, this and that, and, crickets. Um,
Mm. Yeah.
and, that is absolutely fine. I get their passion, their energy for the physical cycle. I love it. They're beautiful people. And I have not felt that those worlds can mesh so much, whereas, there's a yoga community and quite often you will find sound baths in yoga and there is a crossover and people are kind of open to those experiences. So I have felt it in that realm. And then I was just working on my tax extension a couple of days ago. And I'm itemizing my business deductions of tarot cards and crystals and these things. And I just thought,
That's great.
I have a wonderful CPA, but I just thought I'm probably, I'm sure there are comments flying around in the office about my business deductions, and that's fine,
Yeah.
But it is just that awareness that when I'm around, similar minded people, we throw things out and we're familiar with them. And, there are so many tools out there. Some of us, gravitate towards some than others, but there's a recognition. Um, and then when you bring that conversation into more everyday life, you remember, oh wait, that's not in their repertoire of daily activities or tools for personal development. They have other things they will use. So sometimes I'll catch myself, and I am perfectly fine if people think it's out there or a bit strange or all of that. So
Yeah.
it
Do
exists.
you,
Yeah.
do you
But
ever get this?
I was on a plane, it's probably about 6 months ago, and
Hmm.
I had a deck of cards and I had 2 seats free next to me, and I thought, oh, I haven't done a reading for a while, and I had brought the cards, so I was doing a reading on the seat next to me, and the stewardess, as she was coming by, she's like, oh, you read cards, and we had this whole conversation, and I felt like, huh, I wouldn't have pegged a stewardess as being a tarot card reader, and I thought, well, that's, I'm like, why wouldn't I? But that was kind of a fun, because I was being a little secretive of it because I was kind of aware, like, I was just sort of like, this is my private thing. We don't need to display cards. So then I thought, well, maybe I should just be more open about it and have more fun conversations with people. So that's kind of my new approach to it.
Yeah, and I'm wondering too if you have sensed that in some ways, and I definitely can identify with that. Speaking with people about things of the spirit, or when I was really busy trying to learn everything, since my path was really very much intellectualizing things, until I realized it wasn't really, I was just kind of running in circles, trying to know and to find out everything. When I came to a point where I recognized that people didn't necessarily want to, they could not really necessarily always, meet me in that place. And so I'm wondering if there's been any discovery of just, if, even if it's people that are not open to hearing anything about it, have you sensed that just your being, or the way your consciousness as a result of these practices that you have undertaken and the work that you have done with yourself, if that actually, if you get a sense that that has benefited people, and if without them even really, knowing or need to know what exactly it is that you've done, or what work has been done. And I'm sorry if that was a little bit complex. I know that was a large question. Sorry. I
Yeah.
tend to do this.
I hope so. I mean, I do have that view of, we are all on a journey, and, I have friends that figured it out, that had awoken before I did, and I never felt judgment from them. Um, and that's the same way, I'm with other, it's sort of like, okay, if someone is living in their head and, not connected or whatever this is, like, they're on their journey. I'm on my journey. We're all on our journeys. We're all at different places. Um, so I don't have a judgment like that over, oh, someone's into this, they're not into this, they live this way, um, I've I've had, when I offer the sound baths or Reiki, I've had people where this has been their first experience, and they're just curious and open, and it it fills me with so much joy and gratitude when, afterwards, if they said, wow, that was such a profound experience. And people are very open to talk about what came up for them or what understanding they had. So I think that's a more direct way, because they did attend, an event or
Yeah.
geared towards something. So I don't know if I've had an impact on anyone else out there. I hope so. I mean, I think, and I think if people are open, and they don't necessarily have to be on a spiritual path, but just open to personal transformation, open to personal development, that we can all pull things from each other. I mean, it can be someone, I've had people that I don't like their actions, I don't like their personality, but there are things about them, that I can admire and take away from that. And, I can very easily separate those two. So hopefully, even if someone's not into spiritual development, it could be like, hey, here's an approach to this, or even the idea of, we all need to pause and create space to tap in to our inner knowing. And, that can help everybody on their path. So hopefully, that's going on.
Yeah, I just love these, these everyday moments in life when we just come across people, and it's always something that I wonder about. And not that I'm trying to be any certain way or do anything so much, but I do wonder. I know there's people that I've come across, and in my journey, and I had no way of knowing whether they had engaged in any spiritual practices or any introspection of any sort, and not knowing any of that. And yet sometimes there's this, and I'm wondering if you ever pick up on energy from people that you may not know their story, you may not have the opportunity or the luxury to hear that, but if it's just more of a felt sense.
I think, I mean, there, a lot of us do have those, empath tendencies of, you'll just be in the grocery store or something, and you get a reading on someone of, they're going through this, or they're feeling this, or, and it's just, I think when you get those hits, it's just that reminder that everybody is always going through something. We have no idea what that is. Um, some people can try and hide it. Some people can, and that was one of those things. And when I went through this spiritual awakening, all of a sudden I was able to pick it wasn't even, seeking to pick up. It would just be, oh, that person's feeling this, or this is what they're thinking, and, um, but just that idea that, yeah, we all need support. We all need love. We all need understanding. And even if that person in the grocery store, I don't understand them, their situation, the logical thing, but just that heart opening, that heart understanding, just to hold space. I think we can all benefit from that.
Yeah, absolutely. And then just switching gears a little bit, I don't want to assume that there was just, a single moment in time or an aha moment for you, but just anything that you might speak to over and above of what you've spoken to already in terms of what it was like for you to begin to offer these various healing modalities to people, and what it has been like since then, just in terms of how that has felt in your heart, soul, and spirit to
Mm.
actually share these things with people.
Yeah, it's I've noticed a pattern between, what I've done, from the fitness side, kind of moving into the energy work, and the sound healing of, it started out that, I was a participant in these things, and it just hit me, those things of just, wow, I love how I feel. I love what this does to my spirit, my body, all of these things. And then I just got curious of, what's behind it? How does it happen? Like, how do you construct a cycle class, and why are we doing these things? Same thing with, the Reiki of, okay, I can feel this. I feel better. How do you do this?
Mm.
What's the why behind this? So I get in my head about things. And same thing with the sound baths, it's like, why does it have this effect? How do you create this container for other people? And so I would, learn about these things, take courses, practice and all that. Um, and then again, I never set out with any of them to offer them to other people, but
Oh, wow. Yeah.
it was just this burning curiosity and passion to learn about it, and love of, these tools. But then I found with each of them, once I got to a certain level of comfort with that understanding, it was this desire to share it, of, to be like, wow, this worked for me. It may not work for everybody, but wow, I want to share this, and just like an exuberance with it. So I started, I guess I did it was kind of a slow roll, but yeah, I think I started with the Reiki, and it was just kind of, I started on my kids. My daughter like let me do it once, but she was the one who was like, "You're done here." My son, much more open, and then friends, and then I started offering on YouTube distance Reiki sessions, and then went through, and just getting the feedback on YouTube is really incredible. Because it's just people. People want to share like, hey, I felt this, or, different things. It's really nice to know that it's like, fantastic. That was my goal, is that you feel better, that this is helping you. And then doing Reiki shares. We have a beautiful space here in town, and they have open houses, and practitioners can offer, mini sessions and do things. And so I ended up going into a room one day with 4 other women. All of us are master Reiki practitioners. Turns out we were all from Chicago.
Mm.
We didn't know each other, and we're out in Oregon. But it was the energy in that room that day. And, we just had kind of background music, light talking, but, people were coming and going. And the whole room, it was just the most amazing, beautiful experience. And I just thought, I'm like, this is why I do it. It was just like, having people come, there was the joy from that. Um, Being in a room with everyone, we all had a similar mindset as to why we were there, what we were doing, why we were doing it. So it's just beautiful to be in that community of people, and to just help people in a way that's helped me. So it's just a soul calling, and it's that dropping in. What am I meant to be doing? And this is it.
Yeah, and I really want to honor, and I love how you were speaking of that in terms of you learn these things yourself first, and then finding yourself being called to share those with others. And to me, that is something that is incredibly, and in my heart and mind, not an opinion or a belief, but that there's a very sacred aspect, or that is something that is very sacred, that sharing and putting yourself out in the world to be willing to share this with people, and not necessarily knowing how it's going to land or when it's going to land, but that
Yeah.
somehow, the trust that the people that need to find you somehow find you.
Hmm. Very much. And it's
Yeah.
interesting with, with the sound baths, with things like that, that starting out, I would have just a few people come, and there's always that idea of, okay, who finds you is meant to find you. But then also from another side, you want to reach as many people as possible and you
Oh
want to
yeah.
impact more. And so there's always that, that balance of, yes, let's make this a glorious big event with lots of people. And, at the same time, okay, we just have a few, and what a sacred space that is as well. And in those spaces, people are more open to share. And, so there are sides to everything.
Yeah, and I love that whole, the human part of this. In other words, the planning and the figuring out how to connect with people and how to share what it is you have to offer. And as a human being, I definitely respect that whole idea of wanting to try to maximize the impact of that in the world. But then also your recognition that ultimately it's people find you sometimes for very mysterious or mystical reasons that maybe sometimes sometimes it can't be known. But I really do honor your willingness to both be working at this from the human realm as well as also from the realm of the soul and spirit. That
I found that,
there's that balance or integration.
and it's interesting because I've found, I'll get up in the ethers with, the universe and all of that, the beautiful things that happen with that. But I do find, having my own business and, you know, making all those decisions is very grounding and necessary. And I found that it's created a nice balance, because I think otherwise, I'd just be floating up there and, um, I
Been there.
struggled with
Yeah.
that for a while because for a while I went through this period thinking, being tapped in and all of the beautiful things that happen there. Why do I have to come back down to earth and clean the kitchen? And it was
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
painful and just the everyday mundane stuff. But then remembering, what, I chose to be here on earth. I chose this body. I chose this experience. It's okay, make the most of that. And I think there's finding that balance of whether it's, the balance between masculine and feminine energy, between logic and the heart. But part of being here, being as we are in, human form, is navigating that dance. And, I know for me, it's like that'll get off kilter sometimes. And it's about creating the space, having that awareness, be like, whoop, I'm too much here, too much there, but always taking that inspired action. So it's always a
Yeah.
learning experience.
Oh, absolutely. Have you also found, as a result of, doing the human stuff, that everyday stuff like you're talking about, as far as cleaning the kitchen, getting the groceries, paying the bills, all the and all the, uh in terms of business planning and figuring things out, have you found that does some of that feel any more sacred in a way?
It does. It absolutely. I love that question. Yes, it's. And I keep coming back to that word, inspired action, but um, yeah, and it's reading too. When things are not going according to plan, to take that as the universe saying, "Stop, reassess. What is your heart telling you need to do?" And always checking it through the mind. But really taking those signals of, rather than getting frustrated with things not going my way, I take it as a sign that the universe is trying to redirect me in a certain way. So very much everything I do is inspired that way, and it's checking in and feeling aligned. And if it doesn't, that means things need to change. And so it's all, it's a way of growth rather than, okay, here's my business plan, here's my paper, I need to stick to this.
Yeah.
And then it comes back, well, I've tried that. I've tried the forcing. I've tried the head stuff. And for me, does not work in my favor. And I don't have inner peace with that. I don't have that sense of success and happiness. But when I approach it from the heart and with inspired action, I feel so fulfilled, and I don't question myself. And I think that's where that inner peace comes from too, of not looking outside of myself. I mean, obviously, business strategies, things like that. There's information out there, concrete stuff that is so helpful. But ultimately, when making those decisions, they need to be from within, because that's where we're guided from. And those have not served me wrong yet. So
Yeah, and I do. I deeply honor your openness to this, and I'm so appreciative for what you've shared here. And it's something to me is certainly very nourishing and very inspiring as well. And I'm very grateful for that. I think that's all the questions I have that are just coming up intuitively, so to speak. And my apologies again. I know sometimes because I don't these questions are not known to me until I'm in the moment. And I try to really find a balance. In other words, I don't want to waste any your or anybody else's time trying to figure out what the question is, but it's almost like they just sort of are revealed. And it's just finding that balance between, not, trying to actually honor the spirit of the question, but without taking up too much of anyone's time. So, yeah, I'm just very appreciative that you've been open to this. And I'm
Oh,
wondering if there's anything just over and above what you shared already. I wanted to give you just a little bit of space and time. If there is any questions I have not asked or anything that you feel there's no expectations, there may or may not be anything there, but I just wanted to give you a little bit of room and should that be the case.
oh, I thank you for your wonderful questions, and this is a great conversation.
Thank you.
Yeah, I feel like we've covered quite a bit of ground, and
Yeah.
I certainly appreciate our time.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. It has been an honor to hear about your journey and to hear from you in your own words. And on a human level, it's been very good to meet you as well. So I definitely recognize there's all these various levels, the 4D and the 3D and how you integrated that here today. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Jeff. I appreciate it.
Certainly.